Just one directive, one unsigned metadata scrubbed surveillance order routed from CIA headquarters directly into 12 FBI field offices would trigger the most explosive intelligence confrontation in modern Senate history, and expose Director Adrian Vance's covert attempt to move America's Foreign Intelligence Service into the one battlefield it was never permitted to enter: domestic political life. What followed wasn't oversight. It was a constitutional collision. May 22, 2026, 9:20 a.m., Dirksen Senate Office Building, Room 342. The morning light sliced through the tall glass panels, washing across polished walnut desks and the cold metal trim of witness microphones. Cameras whirred, staffers whispered. Security stiffened. At the witness table sat CIA Director Adrian Vannce, unnervingly still. His charcoal suit was aggressively tailored, his navy tie knotted with surgical precision, and the silver-edged CIA lapel pin on his chest gleamed under the television lights like a warning, not an ornament. Vannce carried the brittle confidence of a man who had spent 2 decades teaching others how to control information and believed he could control this room too. He was wrong. Because walking toward the microphone with a folder thick enough to fracture an intelligence career was Senator Amelia Thornwright, one of Congress's most disciplined constitutional investigators, soft-spoken, precise, unnervingly prepared. She didn't look at Vannce as she sat. She looked at the folder, the tan binder delivered to her office 36 hours earlier by former CIA liaison technician Joseph Mallory, who disappeared from Washington the next morning. Inside that folder was a document no American was ever supposed to see: Lynx Directive, foreign signal deviations, with domestic overlap. But in the margin, in pencil, someone had crossed out foreign and circled it twice. Beneath it, scrawled in shaky handwriting, domestic anomaly prioritization, high confidence reclassification. That single line of graphite was the spark that ignited this hearing. Thornwright opened the folder slowly, as if peeling back the floorboards of an institution. The room fell silent. Senator Thornwright adjusted her glasses, leaned slightly toward the microphone, and spoke with the calm clarity of someone who already knew the answers, and just needed them spoken on the record. Director Vannce, before we begin, I want to confirm one thing for the committee. Did you authorize the Lynx Directive? Vannce did not blink. Senator, I'm not familiar with that terminology. A lie, delivered with rehearsed discipline. Thornwright flipped a page. The cameras zoomed in. She read the header aloud. Lynx Directive, Authorization, ADV, a DV, Adrian D. Vannce. The room stirred. Vannce adjusted his cufflink, a tiny move, but the kind of move intelligence veterans recognize as a pressure tell. Thornwright continued, this directive was transmitted from a restricted CIA server at 2:14 a.m. on April 9th. It was sent to 12 FBI field offices, not foreign posts, 12, all domestic. She let the number hang in the air. Director Vannce, why was a foreign intelligence directive routed into domestic FBI infrastructure? Vannce inhaled once, sharply. Senator, I'm not going to discuss operational matters in an open session. A classic intelligence dodge. Thornwright didn't let it land. Good, she said coldly. Then let's not discuss operations. Let's discuss law. She slid the next page into view, a screenshot of the directive's classification footer. Domestic anomaly identification, priority flag red. The room froze. Thornwright's voice lowered. Director Vannce, why is the CIA flagging American citizens as domestic anomalies? Vance's jaw tightened. Senator, that characterization is inaccurate. It's not characterization, she cut in. It's your text. She tapped the page lightly. And every analyst in this town knows that a priority red flag triggers automated cross-matching with federal databases. That includes social media metadata, local camera grids, retail purchase logs, and travel records. She paused. So I'll ask again, and I want a clean answer. Why is the CIA generating domestic targeting flags against U.S. persons for the FBI to process? The silence was suffocating. Vance attempted his second dodge. Senator, Lynx is a foreign signal integrity tool. Any domestic overlap is incidental. Thornwright struck like a scalpel. Then why does the directive include a list of 7 U.S. states and 53 U.S. municipalities under the category Enhanced Anomaly Review? Gasps rippled through the hearing room. Vance blinked, the first crack in his armor. Thornwright leaned forward, eyes locked on him. Director Vance, this is not incidental. This is domestic targeting. This is unauthorized surveillance. And this is a violation of every statutory boundary between the CIA and the American people. The cameras zoomed closer. The hearing had shifted from evasion to exposure. Thornwright turned one more page, the most devastating page. And now, Director Vance, we need to talk about the handwritten note found in the margin of your directive. She held it up. Domestic anomaly prioritization, high confidence reclassification. Whose handwriting is this? She asked softly. Vance swallowed, and the hearing exploded. The margin note. The hearing room fell silent the moment Senator Amelia Thornwright lifted the page. Not the directive itself, but the handwriting in its margin. Domestic anomaly prioritization, high confidence reclassification. She lowered the page toward Director Adrian Vannce. Director, is this your handwriting? Vance froze. A half-second blink. The kind intelligence officers spend careers learning to suppress. Senator, I can't confirm the origin of... It's not a note. Her voice sliced straight through him. It's a reclassification order. It turns a foreign signal tool into a domestic targeting engine. She opened a second folder. Routing logs. CIA, FBI, 7th floor, Domestic Anomaly Unit. 3 agencies, 1 directive, 0 legal authority. So, Director, she continued, why did a foreign intelligence protocol flow into a domestic FBI system? Vance inhaled slowly. Another tell. Interagency coordination often... Coordination doesn't explain this. She tapped the page again. Your directive includes a category called cluster redline individuals, a term used only for foreign adversaries. So why are U.S. cities, Denver, Charlotte, Phoenix, listed as redline zones? A murmur rippled through the room. Vance didn't answer. He couldn't. Thornwright wasn't finished. She slid one final sheet forward. Lynx integration, CP oversight. CP, Cass Petrell, the FBI director, gasps. Director Vance, she said quietly, did you authorize FBI Director Cass Petrell to participate in domestic routing of a CIA foreign signal tool? Silence, no denial, no deflection, just the unmistakable expression of a man who understood the trap had already closed. And then Thornwright delivered the strike that ended him. She lifted a redacted list. 412 American citizens labeled as Signal Divergence, Tier Redline, Foreign Enemy Classification, applied to Americans. Director Vance, she asked, is the CIA running a domestic targeting program and using Director Petrell to hide it? Fade to silence. He had nothing left to say. Petrell's shadow. Senator Thornwright held up the margin note again. Director Vance still hadn't answered. She spoke evenly. Director, we just received confirmation that FBI Director Cass Petrell is scheduled to brief your Lynx task group in 90 minutes. The room shifted. Vance's eyes tightened. Thornwright continued. So while you claim you can't confirm operational details, Director Petrell is actively coordinating a CIA origin program that flags American citizens. She lifted another page. Category Black Glyph, domestic behavioral deviations consistent with foreign hostile patterning. Her voice sharpened. These are U.S. citizens. Yet your directive routes Black Glyph designations directly to the FBI. She paused. Director Vance? Is Cass Petrell conducting domestic assessments, based on your foreign intelligence algorithm? Vance didn't respond. Thornwright pressed harder. The CIA is forbidden from domestic collection. Yet Lynx lists U.S. cities as red line zones and labels Americans as signal divergence, tier red line. She set the document down. You wrote the directive, and you gave its enforcement power to Cass Petrell. Silence. The collapse was complete. Petrell responds. Director Vance had already broken. Now Senator Thornwright shifted to the person he had tried to shield. Cass Petrell. She held up a thin sheet, an internal handoff memo. Director Vance transferred Lynx review authority to FBI Director Cass Petrell on April 12th. Thornwright continued. That means an FBI director, already under scrutiny for loyalty tests, polygraph purges, and case-based firings, was given access to a CIA tool designed to classify Americans as foreign pattern threats. She turned to Vance again. Why him? No answer. So she read from the memo. Cross-Agency Integration Lead, C. Petrell Domestic Divergence Review. Final Decision Authority. Her voice hardened. Director Vance, did you give Cass Petrell the power to decide which Americans are flagged as red line targets? Silence. Thornwright pressed the final point. Lynx was built for foreign intelligence. Under your oversight and Petrell's, it became a domestic political mapping tool. She set the memo down. We are no longer talking about misrouting. We are talking about classification of U.S. citizens as foreign-aligned anomalies. The room held still, and Cass Petrell approved every final designation. Fade. The scandal was no longer about a directive. It was about who controlled it. Deviation Model 7C, Senator Thornwright closed her folder and issued a simple instruction. Bring in Director Petrell. A murmur swept the room. Cass Petrell wasn't scheduled to testify today, which meant he had something to hide. He entered with the same rigid confidence he always used in hearings, chin up, jaw locked, eyes forward. But Thornwright didn't let him settle. Director Petrell, are you aware that your name appears on the Lynx Directive as final authority for domestic divergence review? Petrell didn't flinch. Senator, I don't recognize that document. Thornwright expected that answer. She lifted a single sheet. Deviation Model 7C. Petrell's eyes shifted, barely, but enough. Thornwright read, Model 7C, domestic alignment scoring derived from foreign signal pattern matching, used to evaluate behavioral anomalies within U.S. populations. She lowered the page. Director Petrell, did you or did you not approve Model 7C for use inside FBI data systems? Petrell tried to retreat. Senator, I can't discuss analytical models. You already did, she cut in. She tapped the sheet again. Your initials, CP. Petrell stayed silent. Thornwright delivered the strike. Model 7C classifies Americans using the same scoring system the CIA uses for foreign hostile actors. Her voice stayed level. Director Petrell, you authorized this. Director Vance supplied it. And together, you ran a domestic threat index with foreign adversary tools. Petrell said nothing. The room didn't move. Thornwright closed the folder. Deviation Model 7C wasn't an accident. It was the bridge between a CIA algorithm and FBI enforcement authority. Fade. The scandal had a new center. Behavioral convergence tracking. Senator Thornwright opened one last document, thinner than the others, but far more dangerous. Director Petrell, Director Vance, this is the internal summary attached to Lynx. She held it up. Behavioral convergence tracking. The phrase alone shifted the room. Thornwright read, BCT, a classification system designed to measure the degree to which U.S. persons exhibit behavioral patterns consistent with foreign-aligned digital ecosystems. She looked directly at Petrell. Foreign-aligned digital ecosystems, meaning what Americans read, share, click, or talk about online. Petrell stared ahead, rigid. Thornwright continued. Lynx didn't target threats, it targeted behavior, and BCT turned that behavior into a numerical threat index identical to the CIA's foreign adversary model. She tapped the page. Director Vannce fed the data. Director Petrell enforced the scoring. Then she read the line that detonated the hearing. BCT scores above 0.64 are automatically flagged for domestic divergence review. She lowered the sheet. Americans were flagged, not for criminal activity, not for foreign contact, but for pattern similarity. Her voice sharpened. Reading habits, search queries, group behavior, algorithmic clustering. She raised the document once more. This is how Lynx turned into a domestic loyalty index. Neither director spoke. Thornwright closed the file. Behavioral convergence tracking wasn't oversight. It wasn't security. It was classification of Americans by ideological proximity to foreign patterns. She paused, and both of you signed it. Fade. The line that was never meant to be crossed. The room was silent. Not the ordinary silence of a hearing, but the kind that comes when every person present realizes they've stepped into history. Senator Thornwright slid forward one last document, thicker, heavier, sealed with a red classification band. She spoke quietly. This is the internal after-action analysis for Lynx Directive implementation. Her finger rested on a single paragraph. Section 12, Contingency Use Case. She read, if behavioral convergence scores indicate widespread domestic drift, analytic authorities may expand foreign adversary models to U.S. persons without additional approval from DOJ, ODNI, or the FISA court. The air shifted. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Thornwright looked directly at Petrell and Vannce. You removed the legal firewall, the one every director before you protected, the one that separates foreign intelligence collection from Americans' private lives. Neither man moved. She continued. You didn't stumble across the line. You erased it. Petrell started to speak, but Thornwright raised her hand. I'm not finished. She lifted the document again. This clause, Section 12, does not appear in any briefing to Congress, not in January, not in March, not in the supplemental update. Her voice sharpened. You hid the one section that transformed Lynx from a surveillance tool into a domestic authority mechanism. Vannce finally whispered, Senator, the threat environment. She cut him off instantly. The threat environment has never authorized a foreign intelligence architecture to classify American citizens without judicial approval. Then Thornwright placed the final page on the table. A single sentence highlighted in yellow. She read it slowly. Domestic drift indicators should be interpreted as potential allegiance deviation. The room froze. Thornwright leaned forward. Allegiance deviation. That's not intelligence language. That's ideological language. She closed the folder. You built a system that measures loyalty, and you aimed it inward. Petrell looked down. Vannce looked away. The senator ended the hearing with one line, calm, devastating, and unmistakable. The question now is simple. How much of Lynx was implemented, and how much of America was measured? Fade, silence, end.